What are the most difficult or awkward interviews you've ever had to do? I feel sort of guilty revealing these sometimes. I feel like I shouldn't be saying it. It's a bit mean. Harry, do you want to venture somebody that you found particularly awkward or difficult to interview?
Well, I think most politicians are pretty awkward to interview. I think the way that interviews work in politics. That's, you have this sort of
the
slightly,
choreography.
the weird small talk beforehand, and then there's silence before you start rolling, all that sort of stuff. I think that probably the most awkward one, the most awkward person I've interviewed, I would say, is Liz Truss. And I interviewed her quite a few times when she was a minister, and then during her leadership campaign. And then when she was prime minister as well, I was probably one of the few journalists who got the chance to interview her during that period. But she has this slightly strange thing where she doesn't like any distractions behind the camera. So there was this one interview I was doing with her where she ushered all of her aides out the way from behind me, and we were in this really small room, and she wanted them all out of her eye line so she could only look at me, and I was the only thing in her eye line. Nothing else could distract her.
Saw quite a lot of pressure on you as well.
Yeah, but it meant that this interview that was supposed to last for 2 minutes, and I was only going to ask 3 questions or whatever, because there was nobody behind me to sort of tap me on the shoulder and say, come on, hurry up, this is time to be over now. This interview just went on and on and on, and I could ask Liz Truss as many questions as I wanted and sort of skewer her in all sorts of different ways with different questions. And she became more and more uncomfortable, and I could see out the corner of my eye her aides became more and more uncomfortable, but they were sort of helpless to do anything because she had told them to move off to the side. And it just struck me as a kind of a really weird thing for someone to do. And this was just, weeks before she became Prime Minister.
Yeah. The thing I hate, and all governments do this, is when you're doing a pool interview. So for anyone who doesn't know, pool interview is where we do one interview for all the broadcasters to share. And they say to you beforehand what you're going to ask.
Yeah.
And it's normally a cabinet minister. And I actually said to someone the other day, a press officer, I think they can handle it. Yeah. Whatever I'm going to ask, I think they can handle it. They're a very grown-up politician. I'm not going to ask them about the price of milk. I'm going to ask them about a political topic that's on the agenda that day. I've only got 3 questions, allegedly, although we always try and push for more.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be all right. I'd say the most awkward interview I've done, probably with Rishi Sunak when he came back from D-Day, just because of the fallout from it, and trying to handle that during a general election campaign was tricky. He was always perfectly pleasant to interview, Rishi Sunak, but he was quite cross after that interview, and it's sometimes the fallout is actually worse than the interview itself, isn't it?
Yep.
When you're handling all the advisors afterwards who are screaming down the phone at you. Robert, give us yours, please.
Probably too many to mention. I've talked about this before. There was a particular interview I did with Theresa May in Downing Street, where she was obsessed with, I can't even remember what the point was now, but it was some point that she wanted to make about Nicola Sturgeon, who was at the time First Minister of Scotland. And it didn't matter what I asked, she'd memorised a script about Nicola Sturgeon that she just repeated. And those sorts of interviews are so frustrating. They are so annoying. And, I have to say that in many ways, Theresa May now looks like a relatively straightforward, rather principled politician compared to some of those who've gone, who we've seen subsequently. But she was still doing that thing that has damaged trust in, British politics. Viewers absolutely can see when a politician is not answering the question, and viewers hate it, right? And they think much more poorly of any politician who does that. And there was one occasion where I sort of manifested both my frustration and probably the viewers' frustration when she was Prime Minister. In a difficult period, there was a member of her cabinet called Michael Fallon, who was her sort of attack dog, who was always sent out when the government was in a hole, because he not only didn't answer questions, but he didn't answer them in a very aggressive way. And this was when my show was on Sunday, and he came in. I think it was probably during that snap election she called in 2017. Anyway, he was at the end of the show, and it was a really annoying interview. And I thought the cameras were not on me. And right at the end, I sort of banged my head on the table in frustration. Of course, the cameras were on me, and it became, shall we say, a bit of a social media meme.
Everyone's going to be searching for that meme now.